Hello, everyone, and welcome to the One Community Project's weekly webinar series brought to you by ProviderSearch.com. You can join us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time to gain insights from different professionals around the world. My name is Tyler Burke, and I am the webinar organizer and today's moderator. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Vaughn K. Lauer to today's program. Dr. Lauer has over 30 years of experience, pre-K through post-secondary, as a teacher, professor, building, district, and state administrator of special education, and has held various private company directorships in professional development and test development. His latest work includes his book, When the School Says No, How to Get a Yes, and he regularly submits articles to parent magazines on autism and Asperger's. So, Dr. Lauer, thank you for being on today's program.
Hi, Tyler, and thank you for having me. I want to start by asking you if you believe that IEP meetings are based on negotiations. I ask that because of this question. Which of your child's services are you willing to give up? The answer is probably none, but by definition alone, negotiations means that you are willing to give up something to get something, and the other side is willing to do the same thing. If you do that, you're most definitely considering giving up services. There's a better approach to this. Because what if IEP meeting members cooperated in a collaborative way? And if the focus was only on your child's needs, not the needs that you might have, or the needs of the school, or the needs of an administrator, but your child's needs only. Because you knew that achieving collaboration comes from answering just 6 questions. I know, only 6 questions? Well, let's first look at what the difference between collaboration and structured collaboration is. Collaboration is a group of people who are willing to work together on an agreed upon goal. Unfortunately, in terms of collaboration, a lot of time is often spent figuring out where to begin. Time is then spent trying to figure out how to collaborate, and it's not always clear how to finish the project. Whereas in structured collaboration, the concept is the same in that a group of people will work together on a common goal, but all of them know the steps that they're going to take. They know that it's an easy to implement and practice system, and they know that they're going to be asked questions and that each one of them has to give a reply. We know also, as part of a structured collaborative team, that the questions will guide us into completing the product. In our case, the IEP. There are 2 important concepts to keep in mind when using a structured collaborative approach. One is that it encourages introspection of behavior and communication. And I say that because you know that you are one of many who is going to answer the question posed to the entire group. And we know that you, as an individual, are going to give an example, a response, and that you're taking in all the other information that's provided to you. And the second point is that we'll be constructing small incremental steps of agreement. And this is really, really important because in our 6 questions, we ask a question, we answer it, we agree. We ask the next question, and the answer is partially based on the previous question, mostly based on the answer to the previous question. So all along, we're reaching agreement. We are not trying to take the whole thing at one time. By answering those 6 key questions as a team, we are able to complete the IEP. Here are the 6 questions. What do we know? Where do we need to go? How will we get there? How do we know we're getting there? How do we know when we've arrived? And where do we go from there? Let's consider the GPS system. The first time you begin to operate that system, whether it's in your car or your phone, the very first thing you have to do is make sure that your system knows where it is. You can't key in, I want to go to Disneyland, let's say, and expect to get good directions. Because first, the GPS system needs to know where it is. And that is very much the process of the 6 steps. If we know where we are, then we're able to reach our goal of where we want to go. The GPS system also does something else for us. It periodically tells us where we are in that process. It can tell us that we have X number of hours to go, X number of miles to go. We constantly get some sort of feedback so that we know how much progress we're making. And what's really cool is when we arrive, assuming that the GPS is accurate, it will tell us, in fact, we have arrived. So it very much follows the 6 questions. There are 2 other key ingredients to answering these questions. One is using data, and the other is behaviors. What are data? Data, simply information, and we deal with information and data all day long. We're walking down the street, we see other people, we know if we have to move to the left, to the right. We get data as we're driving. We get information from stop signs or slow down or speed limits. We get information from the cars in front of us, behind us, and so forth. So we're always processing information, and we're doing no more than that in an IEP meeting. The problem with data are there are 2 kinds. There's what I call fluff, and then there's stuff. Fluff data are things that look good, feel good, make us feel good, but really don't provide much assistance to us in making decisions. Stuff, on the other hand, are numerics and information that do help us make an informed decision. Let's look at one example. We're looking at the Woodcock Reading Mastery Test, excuse me, and we see on the right a column of grade equivalents, and we see on the left of that the various areas that were being measured. Let's look at toward the middle where it says word attack. It says that the child is functioning at the 2nd year, 7-month grade level. I go, okay, my child can read at that level. I know she's not reading at the 5th grade level. I know she's in kindergarten, so she must be reading years and years above her present placement. No matter how you look at it, what you've decided is totally incorrect. Grade equivalent does not mean that. It simply means that your child got X number of items correct. Let me give an example. Let's say there are 10, let's use the numbers 1 through 10. And your child was asked to identify all the numbers that they see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. And what they answer correctly is 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And they get a score of 2.7. Another child does not understand 1 or 3, but understands 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Also gets 5 correct. They get the same score as 2.7. Are they the same? Are they the same abilities? Absolutely not. They are simply reflecting the number of correct answers. So if somebody's presenting grade equivalence to you, discount it. Know that it's not useful information. Looks good, makes us feel good. I can understand that, but it turns out that's not at all what it is. I'm not going to spend any time with the information on the left, but it represents a listing of standard scores that were achieved on a different test. And I would, if we had time, explain that they are much more meaningful to us, even though at first glance they look complicated. They are not. The other area is behaviors. And we start with understanding that behaviors have to be describable and observable. Often when parents go to talk to the physician to explain a problem they're seeing, they don't know how to do it in a way that the doctor can visualize what the parents see at home. And that makes it difficult for the doctor to understand the situation. You want the same courtesy from teachers when they start to explain the problems they see. And I look at behaviors as terms of academics, math, reading. Behaviors are motoric, the ability to move around, the ability to move around the classroom, to pronounce letters and words correctly, whatever it might be. All of these are behaviors. But if a teacher starts saying that, well, he has a problem, you know, he seems to have meltdowns, You're going to picture something in your head. The teacher has something entirely different pictured in his head. But what you want to do is say, okay, explain that to me so that you can, in your mind, picture what the parent sees. So again, it's got to be whatever it is, that behavior, describable and observable by almost anybody. We know that behaviors don't occur in a vacuum. We know that things happen before the behavior. We know that sometimes the behavior does occur, sometimes it doesn't. And we want to know what happens after the behavior. I'm looking for more information to help me understand what that behavior is. And the last thing that will help me understand what a behavior is the duration, for example. How long of time does that behavior continue? How often does it happen? Is it 5 times a week? Is it only on Mondays? And then we look at something like intensity of a behavior. Let's go back to the meltdown, and I'm oversimplifying this, but let's picture you're thinking, wow, my poor baby is having a meltdown, must be throwing chairs, really yelling and screaming, and what the teacher had in mind was crying, whimpering to themselves. Well, those are different levels of intensity, and yet they mean entirely different things, yet still the same word has been used. So we want to know several things about behaviors to help us in order to picture it. We started with, I'm going back to the 6 questions now. The first is, what do we know? This is information we have available that helps us get, again, a picture of what my child's levels of performance are. Equally as important are the things we don't know. For example, if you're sitting at a table and we understand that the child has a reading problem, but you ask the question to have it explained to you, and the person's having some difficulty with explaining it, then it might be that I have a sense that there's being a problem, but I'm having difficulty because I don't have enough information. And you know what? I really don't know what the reading problem is. Well, that's good. That's information. It also says that we need to do some additional testing. The second question is, after we've reached agreement on what we know, where our child is where do we want to go? In this case, we're writing goals for our child based on the agreed to needs. We can only do that if we know where we were. It's the only way we can figure out what direction we want to head to. So we're goal setting now based on previously agreed to and identified needs. The next question is, how are we going to get there? Well, it's kind of looking at the tools. What tools do I need to help the child learn to read, improve the area of reading? In this picture, I see a door that might need to be hung, but I don't need a ladder to do that. I might need the drill to drill holes for screws, but in an IEP it is, what services do we need? Do I need reading? Do I need speech and language? Do I need occupational therapy? And the other is, where do I provide these services? Can I provide them in the classroom? Do I have to pull the child out for group instruction or individualized instruction? In order to achieve those goals, we need to know what we need in terms of services to get there. How we know that we're getting there? I'm showing you a report card, but that is not what should be sent home. Because unlikely is it that you have an IEP that says the goal is to get an A or a B or a C. These also don't reflect progress. If we have written a goal in measurable terms, we've identified the behavior, the condition that we're expecting to see it, and the way we're going to measure it, then when report cards are sent home and I get a progress report on the IEP, I should get information very similar to the way the goal is written. For example, if the child's functioning at a knowledge level of 10 letters of the alphabet, and your goal was to recognize 20 or all of the letters of the alphabet, you should get a report that indicates child recognizes, can state 15 letters of the alphabet, and you will get a listing of those 15 letters. That's far more meaningful than saying making progress, which doesn't help you at all, or a letter grade of A, B, or C. So knowing that we're getting there, it means that we have behaviors that are in measurable terms. We want to know how we're going to measure them, what the progress report time is, when I'm going to see it, what it will look like, and who's responsible. Not necessarily by name, but I want to know if it's the special education teacher or occupational therapist. I want to know at least the title of who's responsible for what components of the IEP. How do I know when we've arrived? As long as I've set a goal and I meet that goal, that measurable goal, then I know I'm there. Other question to ask, how do I keep what I have and where do I go from here? What if I've achieved? Well, that's great. It also provides you the information you need to answer the very first question, what do I know? And we do this at annual reviews. We sit down and we look at the data that's been collected over time. We look at where the child is functioning now. We agree to, here's where my child is. And again, we've answered question one. So it's very, I'm going to say circular, cyclical, in that we go back through the questions one more time. Cyclical there. I just wanted to prove I could say the word. So in summary, the focus is always on your child's needs. Again, not yours, not your wishes, not somebody else's, but your child. They're identified needs, they're measurable because we have the data and defined behaviors to help us understand the child's needs. And finally, as we answer each of the 6 questions, we are in fact building the IEP. I have to list one caution, and it's don't always get what you want, but you should get what your child needs. The key to this is asking questions. If something is said and you don't understand it, or something is said and it seems a little odd, ask the question. Can you show me where that's written? Can you show me that policy, for example? Gee, that doesn't make sense. Could I see where that's written? Maybe that's the way it is written. On the other hand, maybe the policy says something else. School staff do not expect you to be statisticians. They do want you to ask questions. They want to be able to explain it to you, but you have to ask them. Otherwise, they're going to assume you do understand. I've taken those 6 questions and I've put them in a book entitled When the School Says No, How to Get the Yes. The book itself is 12 chapters of parent-submitted IEP scenarios, and I analyze each of those against the 6 questions we just went over. And by reading it, parents and educators gain insights into how schools are thinking, how parents are thinking, and how, by experience, where the questions are dealt with very well by some parents, not dealt well by others, and the same with schools. There are actually some schools in the book that carry out very similar to the 6 questions, yet have errors in other parts of their IEP development. So it's an interesting book, and I'll stop talking about it, except again to let you know that the 6 questions are identified throughout the book, and by going through the steps as I've outlined, the chances of getting a yes are greatly improved. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Vaughn. That was great. Very interesting. We did have a couple questions come in, and you alluded to it briefly, but can you address the issue of when the IEP team identifies a need or a service, yet the school comes back and says, "Well, unfortunately, we see that, we recognize that, but we are unable to provide physical therapy, for instance, or speech therapy, for example." Can you kind of walk us through
Yeah,
that scenario?
I can. That's a very good question. In other cases, the school says simply, we're not going to provide that service. The benefit of this system is it's lockstep. In other words, when I identify the child's needs, that they need work on, they have difficulty, let's put it this way, they have difficulty maneuvering their hand, using a pencil and having control over it. And everybody agrees to that. So it's listed as a need under the present levels of performance. The team also agrees that they'd like to improve that skill so that the child can write legibly letters of the alphabet. Okay, so we have that goal. Now comes the time for what services do we need to offer, to provide, to ensure that that goal is being met. And when the school says we don't have anything for that, we have a problem. When the parent says, I think this child probably needs occupational therapy, and the school says, but we don't offer that, we have a problem. Here is where the parent stops the meeting to say, let me make clear I understand. We agree that we see my child has difficulty working fine motor, and everybody agrees. Yep, shakes their head yes. And we agree that we'd like to improve that skill because it's very difficult to understand what it is that he writes. And again, we've all agreed. Do I have that correct? Yes. But you're telling me that you're refusing to provide the service that my child needs. Write that down, because what you're going to do next, stop the meeting. There's no sense continuing because everything else is based on the provision of that service in the IEP. And you say, I need to speak to either my advocate or my attorney. But either way, I stop the meeting and I will get back to you because clearly we've identified the needs, the goal, but you're not providing the services. And sometimes this sounds flippant, but what I'm going to say is you become an advocate or an attorney's dream because they're going to ask you, okay, please identify the problem. And you're going to be able to do that in behavioral terms because you've learned to do that. And the team has said, here's the behavior, here's when it occurs, when it doesn't occur, and so forth, answering question one. Question two is, what is the goal? And they're going to say, well, were you able to establish what needs to occur or where they want to achieve the skills of handwriting? Yes, we absolutely have that. And the person, advocate or attorney, is going to say, and did you all agree to that? Absolutely. Well, where did you disagree? Well, when I said that we need a service, they said we don't have it or we're not providing it. And the attorney or advocate says, thank you. This is an easy case for us. Irrespective of that, the law says that if the needs are identified, the services need to be provided. I'm not saying you need an occupational therapist. You can provide it in a number of ways. What I am saying is you can't deny the service. But by having answered the previous questions, it makes it easy if you have to take it to the next level, a state complaint, a due process, or whatever it might be.